Why the Peter Navarro arrest promises to destroy the political class. We're going to look at the latest on the Navarro arrest. We're going to look at why the January 6th committee has become so utterly desperate. And stick me to the very end of this video and I'll reveal why that committee may in fact mean the end of the political class as we've known it. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone, patriots all across the world. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You know what else I want you to do? I want you to have an amazing night of sleep every night of your life, and you can do that by clicking on the link below and get yourself the one and only My Pillow. That's right, Mike Lindell is a Patriots patriot, and he's now offering you the best sleep of your life with their lowest prices in their history with code Turley. So for example, usually the classic My Pillow $69.98, but if you use my code Turley, you can get your own classic My Pillow for just $19.98, and that applies to over 200 products in their catalog. So don't wait, click on that link below, get one for yourself, get another for the patriots in your life. Let's support our fellow patriot Mike Lindell and get the best sleep of our lives in the process. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. The infamous January 6th committee. Liz Cheney, my gosh. Perhaps the single greatest waste of taxpayer money, for the exception of our sending $40 billion to the most corrupt nation in Europe. They have fallen to a new low. I'm sure many of you have heard that former Trump advisor Peter Navarro was arrested at a Nashville airport where he was reportedly put in handcuffs and leg irons and publicly let out by police. What was so bizarre in all this is that rather than simply allow Navarro to voluntarily surrender, which is the general protocol for someone who a congressional committee holds in contempt, refusing to abide by a subpoena issued by the committee, instead of allowing the dignity of the process to work itself out, as it were, the Justice Department made a dramatic public arrest of Navarro, very similar to what they did with Roger Stone back in January 2019 during the whole bumbling Bob Mueller investigations, which again, keep in mind, was another massive waste of tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money. Now, of course, the very first question we all have to be asking here with this arrest is, what on earth is the January 6th committee doing ordering the arrest of someone who had absolutely nothing to do with January 6th? Peter Navarro's only crime is that he was a close advisor to President Trump. That's it. So what the hell is the committee doing here, engaging the FBI and arresting a citizen whose only crime is that he's a close associate of the man the committee wants to destroy? Again, it needs to be reiterated that Peter Navarro has absolutely nothing to do with January 6th. He was subpoenaed by the committee without really any justification. And of course, the details that they were looking for would require Navarro to betray executive privilege, which all presidents have with their advisors. So what Navarro has to do with January 6th is an absolute mystery to everyone. But the sensationalism that constituted his arrest provides a bit of a clue into what's happening here. You see, even the leftists over at 538 are admitting that nobody cares about January 6th anymore. We're all done. We've moved on. President Trump was already impeached in the House and tried over it in the Senate. And of course, he was exonerated. So with this total lack of interest, the January 6th committee is resorting to some pretty pathetic and banal attempts at sensationalism. They've even hired a far-left activist from ABC News to try to spruce up the media presentation of the hearings this week. Hearings, by the way, which have been delayed for months because of the total incompetence of this committee. So that's at least one reason for the sensationalism of arresting members of Trump's inner circle so dramatically. It adds some splash to an issue that, frankly, no one cares about anymore. But I'm sure you recognize that something much deeper and, frankly, something far more sinister is happening here with this Peter Navarro arrest. What the Democrats and neocons like Liz Cheney are engaged in is something scholars refer to as weaponized legalism. That's the technical term for the politicalization of the law, right? Weaponized legalism. A weaponized legal regime, which is what we now live in, thanks to the Democrats, thanks to rhinos and the legacy media, A weaponized legal regime uses the law to deliberately undermine their political opponents, strengthen themselves and their allies, and then show off their power to threaten and intimidate. So those are the three main objectives for the weaponization of the law: undermining your political opponents, strengthening your own political power, and intimidating anyone else who might be thinking of getting in your way. And that's precisely what the ruling class in Washington, D.C. has become. They have become a weaponized legal regime that uses the laws of political weapons. So, for example, our political class cares nothing, literally nothing about enforcing immigration law at the southern border. But they cared everything about so-called vaccine passports. They didn't give a rip about their law enforcement responsibilities during the whole George Floyd riots over that 2 summers ago. But now suddenly they are the great defenders of the nation against these January 6 insurrectionists. This is weaponized legalism. It's the intentional use of the law to persecute their political opponents and intimidate everyone else, all the while securing their own positions of power. That's exactly what we're seeing here with the arrest of Peter Navarro. But unfortunately, it's not new. I mean, the precursors to this kind of legal persecution abound. What's going on with Peter Navarro is at a fundamental level the exact same thing that went on with the Justice Department launching that all-out investigation several months back on parents who opposed critical race theory being taught in their schools and showed up at their school board meetings to tell the school board precisely that. I mean, you recall that the National School Boards Association formally requested the FBI that the Patriot Act be enforced against parents, which of course renders these parents domestic terrorists. After those revelations came out, Matt Walsh, I think, spoke for a lot of us when he tweeted out, "Leftist activists can come to your house with bullhorns, film you in the bathroom, loot your business, burn police stations. The FBI does nothing. But if conservative parents raise their voices at a school board meeting, they're hunted down as terrorists. The law is dead." Well, almost right. The law isn't dead. It's being exploited, deliberately exploited, as a tool of oppression. So these are banana republic tactics going on here. The law is no longer an objective arbiter of justice. The law is now an exploitive means by which political and partisan goals are achieved by those in power. However, as it turns out, this weaponized legalism may indeed, ironically, be the very means by which the political class destroys itself. But first, how do you like my shirt, The Great MAGA Kings? One of my favorites, and you can get yours. And one for the patron in your life by simply clicking on that link below and visiting our amazing merch store with the best designs in the world. This is a great way to both support this channel and spread Patriot hope far and wide. Click on that link or go to store.turleytalks.com. That is store.turleytalks.com. All right, so what's so ironic in all of this is that this weaponized legalism in a two-party system basically guarantees the implosion of our permanent political class. And that's, of course, because the very people who are exploiting the law for their own political gain will inevitably become victims of the very same exploitation. And so we've got an interpartisan feud, a Hatfields and McCoy's situation brewing here. My namesake, Jonathan Turley, wrote a fascinating piece for The Hill where he argued that the January 6th committee is actually crossing a line that's very, very dangerous to them. And that line they're crossing is they've begun subpoenaing their own fellow members of Congress, like Andrew McCarthy. By the way, I think that's why Trump endorsed McCarthy recently, to kind of, keep him a close ally in all of this. And what Turley argues here is that despite decades of bitterness between the two parties, they've always refrained from using subpoenas against each other historically. And that's because it was viewed as a step toward mutually assured destruction if House members unleashed inherent investigatory powers on each other. But what happened is that House Democrat leaders shattered that long tradition of restraint, surprise, surprise, and now they find themselves having created a new weaponized legalist precedent just months before they'll most likely find themselves in the congressional minority. So the hunters are going to turn into the hunted because now Marjorie Taylor Greene will have subpoena powers. And in addition, they'll also have the power to rescind. So we'll almost absolutely see this House contempt vote against Navarro rescinded by the new Republican majority. That includes Steve Bannon as well, and virtually everyone the House is currently holding in contempt. But the key here is the weaponizing the law has now reached inside the permanent political class. And as such, they're going to be blowing each other up in the process. And when all is said and done, that ain't such a bad thing. Now, before we go, you'll definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded, which explores the question, is America heading for civil war? A number of pundits think so, and we get to the bottom of it. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.